Are American children getting the education they need in our current public school system? Standards sound like a good thing, but is there really such a thing as a standardized human? If there's no such thing as a standardized person, then there should be a way to individualize education. Welcome to Educating the Individual, where we believe that everyone is unique and their education should be also. I'm Jonathan McKean-Chaff, founder of CenterEd and your host. This series is on the CenterEd process. This is our first series of many in the Educating the Individual podcast, but over the next 4 episodes, I'm going to lay out our intake process, our teaching methods, and how we create individualized learning experiences for each student. Our goal is to equip students with what they need to succeed. We don't standardize anything because standardization is generalization, and generalization is lazy. Think of it like this. Imagine you're installing a new roof just for a minute. I know, it's silly because it's a lot easier and safer to just hire a roofer. But just humor me for a minute. You watch a YouTube video on how to do it, and then you need supplies, so you go to the hardware store. Now, you've already got the shingles, and you own a ladder. But what you're looking for is some hammers and nails. And you go in and you say, I need something to put my roof on. I need a hammer and nails. And they say, we got exactly what you need. We got some hammers and nails. And they sell you a hammer and nails. You go home, it goes great, and your roof is done. Now, next week, your brother's looking to clean out his brothers, and you say, my brother, go to this hardware store that I got some hammers and nails at, and they'll hook you up. And he goes, they got what I need to clean out my gutters. He said, yes, of course. So you go, and he says, I'm looking to clean out my gutters. Do you have what I need? Now, your brother went in, he didn't own a ladder, and he didn't own whatever else you need to clean out gutters, because I don't know anything about cleaning out gutters. But they say, we got exactly what you need, sir. You need a hammer and nails. And he goes, okay, all right, if that's what it takes to clean out my gutters. Now, he takes that hammer and nails and goes home and can't figure out how to make these hammer and nails do anything that he needs to do. He can't even reach the gutters because he doesn't have the ladder. They didn't even ask him, do you have a ladder? That's the most important thing for cleaning out your gutters because you can't reach them, right? So his attempt to clean out his gutters falls flat. He fails. He doesn't get anything done. Now, the following week, your kids are playing outside, super athletic kids, right? Really proud of them. Jimmy, let's call him, he's got an arm on him. He's got a really strong arm. They're playing baseball, and he throws the ball, and it goes through one of your neighbor's windows. Oh my gosh, Jimmy, what happened? It was an accident. So your neighbor, he's understanding. You apologize. He says, it's all right. I was looking to replace these windows anyway. Just give me the money, for supplies, and, I'll go get it, and, your kids can help me replace it, whatever, right? You say, I got a great hardware store you should go check out. And he goes to the hardware store. They say, we know exactly what you need to repair a window. You need a hammer and some nails. Now stay with me. He goes home. Your neighbor, not the smartest man on earth, right? And he doesn't watch the YouTube video on how to change out a window, or else he wouldn't have known that he didn't need a hammer and nails. But he goes and he breaks some windows, and he just breaks more windows. Common sense doesn't exist in this universe, right? Obviously, the windows break. These tools were harmful to their efforts, and now they have a drafty house. No good. Think of education in the same way, right? I know it's just you gotta bear with me. If you're not already there, you gotta bear with me. Why are we giving everyone the same set of tools? In the analogy that I just gave you, compare it to school. The education that everyone is getting is good for some people. It's working for some people. It's totally useless for others, and it's actually harmful to some. And what will we say about the hardware store workers? they're lazy, right? Or maybe they don't really listen to the needs of each customer. Or maybe, they just don't have a great manager. Their manager isn't making sure that things are going well for them. Their manager isn't checking on them. That brings me to my first point. Education is relational. What do you mean, Jonathan? Well, there must be a trust between teacher and student. The teacher has to know each student's personality and what they need. At the beginning of each lesson, our teachers ask students about something in their week. Some teachers say, tell me something good that happened this week. That's what I say to all my students. I ask all of them. Sometimes my students, if I forget to ask them, they remind me. And sometimes the students talk about how they practiced, the song they learned, and sometimes they talk about playing board games with their family. No matter what it is, our teachers take the time to build trust and show the student that they care about them and that they care about what they like besides just piano. We encourage parents to do the same thing when it comes to their students' learning. And of course, every good parent has a good relationship with their students, right? They spend time with their kids. Every relationship has to have time to build trust. And the more trust to build in a teaching relationship, the better. We often hear parents say, especially during distance learning, it's the teacher's job to teach, not mine. We've heard that before. But I disagree. We take a unique approach to teaching, which I'll talk about more in the next episode. But this approach encompasses 3 philosophies, one of them being the Suzuki philosophy. And this idea is that parents should be involved in their students' learning. We have some parents, and honestly, all the parents at Center Ed are probably the best parents on the face of the planet. I don't know that we have any bad parents of students at Center Ed. But we have some parents that sit out in the lobby during lessons or, go to a different room in the house if it's an in-home lesson. Then we have other parents that they join in on the lesson. They're part of the lesson. But our goal is to include the parents as much as possible and as much as the student needs and wants, right? And let me tell you, there's no greater influence in a student's life than their parents. Whether or not you believe as a parent, if you're a parent listening right now, whether or not you believe that you have influence in your child's life, I'm telling you, no matter how old they are, you have influence in their lives. And man, I could go on. We're going to dive deeper into, parental involvement in students' lives, but we really believe that's the forefront of learning. That we're just guides and assistants in a student's journey. Ultimately, the student is the center of their education. The parent is the greatest guide and hero of their story. And we're just a guide for the parent and the student on this journey towards the child's self-realization. And it's more than just a music lesson, right? Now, the next thing I want to talk about is it's called a love language test. There's 5 love languages. And to take out, any weirdness of the word love, we'll just call it an affirmation test, right? But it is called the 5 love languages. I think it was Gary Chapman that came up with it. And Gary Chapman came up with the 5 love languages: physical touch, words of affirmation, quality time, acts of service, and giving and receiving gifts. So there's 5 love languages. And we'll talk more about those in the future, but ultimately it's just, how do we reward students? How do we show them that we care about them and that we see them making progress towards a goal? And we sit down with them and we say, let's plan out your goals. Let's plan out what your goals are, what you want to do, and how you want to get there. And let's get there together. Let's walk this road together. We've been there as educators. We have walked through education, plenty of it, right? And we're continually walking through it. We can take you somewhere. And really, one of the biggest hindrances to education is oftentimes just a miscommunication of affirmation. And that's a big hindrance to a lot of relationships. It's a big hindrance to work relationships. Most people leave jobs because of terrible bosses, and most terrible bosses aren't the most terrible people in the world. They're just bad at communicating. They're bad at telling people that they're doing a good job. And they might be great at telling people that they're doing a good job in the way that they know how, but they're not great at telling them in the way that that person needs. And we've seen love languages change entire families. When we've introduced this to families, like, parents are just mind blown, right? And then the next thing is a personality test. We use the Myers-Briggs at Center Ed to understand. So we understand with the love language test how somebody is best rewarded, but with the personality test, we understand how they interact with the world around them. And one big part of the personality test is introversion versus extroversion. Those two parts are so enormously important to understanding how to teach somebody and understanding how to just be around someone and influence them well and influence them to do something good. If somebody's an introvert and I come at them with big energy and I'm just all in their face and all loud and da 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 da, they're not gonna receive that well. Even if it's me being really, really nice. If I'm overly nice, if I'm too close to them, if I'm really just, they're gonna be back off. Doesn't matter how old you are. Everybody has some variants of introversion versus extroversion. And if they're super extroverted and I come at them really quiet and reserved, they're not gonna respect me, right? It's just natural. So we implement these things in education only to help the student work towards what they want to work towards. And then I'm going to just cover really quick. We have a classical philosophy of education with a Montessori approach, and we already talked about the Suzuki method. But classical education is just education for education's sake. Montessori approach, it just means that it's focused on the individual. And let me talk about really quick the classical philosophy versus the pragmatic philosophy of education. The current public school system is a pragmatic approach. And if I haven't said it already in this episode, let me say it now. I am not bashing public school teachers by any means. Public school teachers are the hardest workers, well, some of the hardest workers I know. And they're just in a bad system. And the system was created not for today, but for 100 years ago, when the Industrial Revolution happened, over 100 years ago. The public education system was created in order to create factory workers. It wasn't created to make people creative for a gig economy that we're living in and only growing into more with the advent of technology. Modern technology is destroying a lot of jobs. And if we want children to be educated for the future, then we need to educate them on how to explore. We need to stop tearing away their natural fibers, their natural being. Everyone is born creative. Everyone is born imaginative. And now, if you're not religious, don't tune me out after what I'm about to say. I am a Christian, and I believe that we were created by God. Now, what I'm about to say is true even if you're not religious. And I'll just say it in a different way for those who aren't. But if you are religious, then stick with me. You were created in the image of a creative God in order to be creative. Now, if you're not religious, you were born imaginative. Studies show that. Studies prove what I'm saying right now, that everyone's born imaginative. Somewhere around between 5 and 7 years old, that imagination is stripped away by single file lines and fill in the blank coloring books. Creativity, imagination, is the key to creating anything worth creating. If we want to mimic things, then the current system is fine. If everything worth creating has already been created, then the current system will always work. The current system fails if we want to see students, humans, do the most human thing ever, create. The cure for cancer, the next big scientific breakthrough, the next great work of art, the magnus opus that is within you is within your childlike creativity. And that's really what we're trying to do with our music lessons. We're more than just a music lessons company. We're more than just a tutoring company. At Center Ed, we are a company devoted to the creative and individual mind. I know that sounds all hoity-toity and goofy, but it's not. Everyone is born creative. Now, let me give you something to walk away with. Go take the Myers-Briggs. It's 16personalities.com, I think, and then 5 love languages. Look it up, take the test. See what yours are. See what your children's are if you're a parent. Maybe test a few of your students with your parents' permission if you're a public school teacher. And see how implementing these things can really affect your relationships and just general life, and also affect your education for your students. See how implementing this can change things. And if you want tips and tricks and you need some more help with this, leave a comment, message us, Facebook, or go to centered.education, find our contact information. I'd be happy to help anyone that wants it. And I'd also be happy to hear your thoughts on everything that we just talked about. But with the end of this podcast vlog upon us, let me just encourage you. You were created to be creative. Now go and fearlessly create.